I can't believe it. It's my first blind date.
Oh, I do it all the time.
Really? Whew. You guys meet? Greg, Janice?
We sure did.
That was stupid.
Great.
This is Smart, a beeper service for just $1.99 a month. From who else? Smart Beep. Call 1-800-BEEP-199 for other smart stuff, like directions.
We've got chemistry here. You feel it?
I felt it.
All right, Janice.
That's what happens when you think you're being unsupervised, right? Whew. Man, oh man. Okay, so how many of you like fast food? Anybody like fast food? How many of you rather go to the fast food joint than to go like the steakhouse? Anybody? Y'all would rather go to the steakhouse? In fact, you know what? I just like food. I really don't care. I don't care whether I go out for fast food or to a big joint. It doesn't make any difference to me. I just like food. And I've discovered that the only difference between a good meal and a bad meal is the amount of time in between. That's a fact. I guarantee you. I'll tell you, you start for 2 or 3 days, McDonald's tastes really good, man. Yeah, that's the only difference, the amount of time in between. Let me just welcome you to week number 2 of our series called Unsupervised. I think I said the wrong word last Sunday, didn't I? Wow, anyway. And in this series, what we're doing is we're looking at those times in life when we reach the limit of our ability to understand. There's a lot of stuff that happens in life, and sometimes we just reach that limit to where we just can't quite, it doesn't really process, those things that are going on in our life really doesn't process anymore. It's those times when when your mind kind of goes into overload, because of all the information, all the stuff that's happening, all the things that are coming into your life, and they just don't compute. And because of that, those kind of times then, which are probably the most stressful times in our life, because we're just really at a loss as to what's happening, what's going on. We don't know how to read it, how to process it, all those different kind of things. And so what we generally do is we just naturally come up with our own ideas about what it's all about. And in that process, of course, we also come up with our own ideas about who God is and what God's all about. Because we always look to God. I don't care who we are, believers or unbelievers alike, seekers, doesn't matter. People just seem to always, when something goes wrong, well, they're thinking about God in one way or another. And so we come up with these ideas about who God is and what God is like, especially in those times when life just kind of bites us in the butt. So today what we're going to be talking about is a time when Jesus was kind of waiting around in the living room for dinner to be ready, and the type A personality of the family decides that she knows what Jesus likes best in a person. And she gets really, really upset when nobody else seems to think the same kind of thing. So what we're going to be talking about today is fast food. Check this out. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, man. Even on the desert plains. Yeah, buddy. I'll tell you what. Man. I kind of like the way Jesus thinks. Because, I've noticed that whenever Jesus gets around people, there always seems to be food involved in one way or another. You know what I mean? I've always felt that one of my greatest spiritual gifts is the gift of graze. Graze, where I can hang around the kitchen or around the food table all day long and just graze on food. I'm good. I like to do that. I admit it. I love to eat. And when you look at the life of Jesus, it seems to me that whenever something significant happens or is about to happen or those kinds of things, whenever there is a teachable moment in people's lives of some kind, Jesus is either sitting at the table with a bunch of friends, over food, or he's talking to someone over a glass of wine, or he's lounging in the living room waiting for dinner to be ready, or sometimes we find him out at the lake with a herd of 5,000 hungry people, and he's making a banquet out of 5 loaves and 2 fishes, right? I mean, every time, it seems like there's a lot of that in the Bible where food seems to be involved a lot with a lot of things that Jesus did. I heard about this country preacher one time who was invited over to dinner after church. You know, especially in the country, that's kind of what you do. You're supposed to invite the preacher out for lunch on Sunday. And so this family invited the preacher out to lunch, and they, over to the house for lunch. And so they were sitting in the living room waiting for dinner to be ready. And the little boy sitting there in the front room looked at the preacher and he says, "You know what we're having for dinner?" And he said, "Fried chicken?" And he said, "Nope, guess again." He said, "Well, maybe it's roast beef." "No, sir, wrong again." So, "Well, then tell me, what are we having?" "Well, I heard Mom tell Dad this morning we just well have the old buzzard for dinner today as any other day." I don't know, I've never had buzzard. I've had lots of stuff, but buzzard ain't one of them. So Jesus always seems to know where the food is. I like the way he thinks. It works out real well. So I think you probably know as well as I do that some of the best friendship, some of the best fellowship that you'll have in life, a lot of times is shared over food, isn't it? I mean, some of those times when you're really enjoying just hanging out and visiting and, just having a good time, there's probably going to be food involved in one way or another. And it doesn't seem to matter whether it's around the dinner table, or across the table with someone at a cafe, or if it's, like a few years ago, we took a group of guys up on the mountain. We made this big trip around through Timberon and up through Weed, and then through Cloudcroft and so on and so forth. And we took hot dogs with us, and buns, and we thought we had all the stuff. And when we got there to build a little campfire and got the hot dogs out and got the buns out, that's all we had. Hot dogs and buns. And as a matter of fact, one of the boys in church, he's a man now, one of the men in church now, he still talks about that as being the best hot dog he ever ate, Yeah, I agree. Over a campfire out in the woods, there's nothing better. So the story we're going to be looking at today is found in Luke chapter 10. And it's the story about a woman by the name of Martha who was certain that she knew what it is that God is most impressed with in people. What it is that God most desires for us to be like. Martha was convinced that the kind of person that Jesus admires the most is someone who is always busy doing stuff for him. Now this story actually takes place at the home of Mary and Martha and Lazarus, which was brother and sisters, and Jesus considered this family to be really, really good friends of his. They got along really well. Everything was really good. They just had a really good relationship. And you may remember that Lazarus, as I mentioned a moment ago, he's the same guy who took sick, to some unknown illness. The Bible doesn't say what happened. He just took sick. And it was Mary, not Martha, Mary who sent word to Jesus and plenty of times so that Jesus could have come from a nearby town. He was only just a couple of miles away. Could have come in plenty of time and healed him and he wouldn't have died. But since Jesus didn't come, the Bible tells us that Jesus actually purposely didn't come right away. Sounds kind of odd, but that's what he did. So that by the time Jesus did arrive at the scene, well, Lazarus was not already dead. He'd already been dead for 3 days. I mean, Jesus waited quite a while before he ever came. As a matter of fact, by the time Jesus got there, Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 3 days. So he'd probably been dead more like 4. I guess it may sound, kind of gross in some ways, but I think it's kind of funny. When Jesus told them to remove the stone, he said, "Well, take me to the tomb where he is," which is, he said, when he told them to take the stone away, Martha now, the other gal that we're going to be talking about today, she's the one who said, "Lord, by this time, he's already beginning to stink." I mean, talk about the practical one, right? She's thinking the practicality of the whole thing, Is this a good time to tell a cannibal joke? I'm going to anyway. A couple of cannibals were sitting there eating lunch together, you know, and they was having soup that day and kind of checking things out, having a good time. And one of them looked at the other, and after a little, you know, conversation kind of lulled down, he said, "You know what? I really don't like your mother-in-law." And he said, "Well, just eat the noodles then." So Martha was obviously the practical one of the bunch, right? She was thinking about what needed to be done, what was right, what was, you know, what you had to be getting done at the time, and probably that, I think she was probably the type A personality of the family. She was very task-oriented, needed to be at the best at everything she did, and also wanted to be recognized for the things that she did, of course. Now, the fact is, Jesus was very close with this family, as I told you a moment ago. So close, in fact, that John makes a special point of saying in John 11:5, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Okay? He loved those people. And John even mentions the fact that the crowd that was there at Lazarus' tomb when Jesus said, "Roll the stone away," that those people even noticed how deep that bond of friendship was between Mary and Martha and Lazarus and Jesus. He mentions the fact that even the crowd noticed that they were really, really close to each other. Okay, so back to the story then. Go back to where we're headed to. John tells us that in Luke chapter 10, verse 38, he said, now as they were traveling along, he entered a village, and he's talking about Jesus, of course, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister called Mary who was seated at the Lord's feet listening to his word. But Martha was distracted with all her preparations, and she came up to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the serving alone?" You know, and then she says, "Well, tell her to help me." Okay, so there's a complaint that just kind of comes running out of her mouth at that, you know, just at some moment. I don't know exactly when, but I guess she'd been in the kitchen for a while and fixing stuff and doing stuff. So, you know, really I think it's possible that when Jesus and his disciples were traveling along, they might have been thinking about the food that was ahead of them, you know. They were probably getting hungry and probably thinking about what they were going to eat. Yesterday, the Grace Riders, a bunch of us took a ride up to Sunspot in New Mexico. It was about a 260 or 70 mile round trip, something like that, on motorcycles. We had a great time, and I know there was part of that time that I was thinking about food. You know, the next stop was where are we going to eat, you know. I was thinking about that. I bet the disciples were kind of doing the same thing, thinking about, well, I wonder what they got on the fire today, you know, beans and cornbread or T-bone steak and mashed potatoes or, you know, maybe chocolate ice cream for dessert. Well, maybe they didn't have that back then. So as Jesus and the other guys and Mary, of course, sat waiting in the front living room for dinner to be ready, this complaint just kind of comes running out of Martha's mouth, you know. And actually, I think it may be more of an accusation in disguise. It looks more like an accusation in disguise to me, because it just kind of comes blurting out. Martha says, "Jesus, you know, can't you see that I'm busy back in here and doing all this stuff for you and getting everything ready? And here's Martha sitting out there with you guys listening to the conversation. Can't you tell her to get in here and get busy and give me a hand? I need some help back here," right? Now on the surface, Martha seems to be upset about the fact that she's having to do all the work. That's what it looks like. You know, all by herself, she's back there slaving away in the kitchen. She's complaining that that's what's going on. I mean, while everybody else is sitting around the living room enjoying the company, she's back there busy doing what she's supposed to be doing. But you know, when I looked at this particular incident, this story, I began to wonder whether Martha's complaint was actually valid. I mean, the facts are, was she or was she not in the kitchen fixing dinner? Yeah, she was. And was not, or were they not, everybody else out in the living room chilling out while she was in the kitchen by herself fixing the food? Yeah, those are the facts. That's true. Technically, yes. There doesn't seem to be any doubt about those things, that she is in the kitchen and everybody else is in the living room, just enjoying the company. However, the question I have about this whole incident, this whole thing is this: is Martha's complaint actually about the fact that she's having to do all the work? Or is it possible that there's, something else going on there? I mean, what was she really upset about here? That's what I'm trying to get at. What was really upsetting her at this point? Is she upset about the fact that she's having to do the work, or is she upset that Mary's not helping her? Is she upset about the fact that Mary is not helping her, or is she upset with Mary because Mary isn't helping her? Or is she upset with Jesus because Jesus isn't making Mary, or even noticing that Mary is not helping her? You understand what I'm saying? I think she may be more upset with Jesus than she is with Mary. I think she may be more upset at the fact that Jesus just seems to be oblivious to the fact that Mary's in there hanging out with the guys while she's there in the kitchen, and he doesn't seem to care. He doesn't seem to notice how busy she is back there in the kitchen. Now, the reason I ask that question, and the reason that comes to my mind, is because Jesus told a parable one time that seems to have the same exact flavor. Seem to be talking about almost the same thing. The same flavor as this story about Martha. It's the story of the parable of the prodigal son. You may not be making the connection, so let me kind of help you out here. You may remember that the youngest son took all of his inheritance, his part of the inheritance, which was the majority of their inheritance, and he left home. And he went, what he did is he went out and he spent his entire inheritance on beer and women and fast cars. I assume he wasted the rest. On the other hand, the oldest son stayed home, and he worked on the farm for his dad like he knew that he was supposed to do, and he was there the whole time. He never left. He didn't do anything wrong. He did all the stuff he knew he was supposed to do. He was working on the farm, staying busy every day, doing all that kind of stuff. However, his motivation for staying home and working the farm seems to come into rather severe question, because after the younger son returns home, things seem to change a lot. Now, I know you hear lots and lots of sermons about the younger son and about his father welcoming him home and all those kind of things, but what about the older son? What about where he's at and what he's doing and what his complaint is and how he's feeling, all that kind of stuff, And you probably already know that when the younger son did come home, that his father welcomed him with open arms, As a matter of fact, threw in this great big party. They killed the fatted calf. They had music. They had dancing. They had all that stuff going on. Put a new set of clothes on his back. They did all that. It was a huge party, However, the oldest son actually refuses to take part in any of that. He just literally refuses to go in and be a part of all that ruckus that's going on. Now, the reason he's refusing is because he believes that he's right and they're wrong. He believes that he is the one who's been doing everything right at this point, up to this point, and nobody else has recognized that fact. Nobody else notices what he's been doing, So he actually complains about the fact that he's the one who stayed home, did all the work for all those years, while his youngest brother did all that other stuff, did nothing but squander his entire inheritance. And here's what he said. He said, "Look, for so many years I have been serving you, and I have never neglected a command of yours. And yet you have never given me," he's talking to his dad, "yet you have never given me a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends." That's the complaint. Here I've done all this stuff, and you don't even care. You don't even seem to notice. Nothing even ever happens. You know? I always did everything I was told to do. I obeyed all the rules. I never gave you any trouble. I did all the things that I knew I should do without even having to be told to. Nobody had to tell me to. I did it. I worked the farm like I was supposed to. However, the most interesting for me in this whole account, this whole story, the most interesting thing about this parable is the father's response to the older son. He said, "Son, you have always been with me, and all that is mine is yours." You've always been with me, and all that is mine is yours. In other words, what his father is saying here, what his dad is saying to him here is that, son, you've misunderstood our relationship entirely. You've entirely misread this whole thing, you know? You don't even know what it means, I guess, to be a son, right? Because working harder in order to receive greater blessings from me, that was never part of the deal. Why wasn't it ever part of the deal? Because everything that I have is already yours. You understand? He said, you didn't need to work harder. You didn't need to try to gain my acceptance. You didn't need to stay home just on account of me so that you could gain all, you know, to be the best son and do all the greatest things and all that kind of stuff, you know. In other words, staying home and working to become more my son than you already are. Does that make any sense at all? But that's what he's done. He stayed home, worked hard to try to gain greater blessings from his father and to try to become more of a son than he already was. You can't become more of a son than you already are. If you're a son, you're a son. If you ain't, you ain't. And so no amount of work or effort or proving or any of those kind of things are going to make you any more a son of your father than you already are. The point is this, is that God loves you because you're his child. You. I'm not talking about these guys, I'm talking about you. God loves you because you are his child. Not because of anything that you might do or try to do to become more pleasing to him. Not anything that you might, say or be that in order to try to become more his son or his child than you already are. And so this complaint from Mary, or from Martha, why are you paying attention to Mary, right? I'm the one you should be paying attention to here. I'm the one who's been working hard, doing all this stuff, and she ain't done nothing. Sound like the older son? It sounds to me more like Mary is trying to gain Jesus' approval by what she does, rather than simply understanding that she's already accepted for who she is without having to do all that stuff. So the real question is, who is God to you? And what do you think he is expecting of you as his child? To do more? To prove your faithfulness? To prove your love? To try to become more of a child than you already are? To gain more of God's blessing than you already have? Listen, you're already totally blessed. God has already given you everything. That is, all that he has is already yours. That's the point. When the Father said, all that is mine is yours, that's true of you. As God's child, all that God has is already yours, and that's the way it is. I don't know what you're trying to do by trying to gain more by the things that you do, by working harder, by all those kind of things. That's what I call the fast food approach to God, you know. Well, it's like that fast food, you know, get it done early, get it done quick, let's, you know, get it fed, we're out of here, you know. So the fast food approach to God is, you know, go to church, read your Bible, pray, give your money. Why? Well, because if you do, then God will bless your life with wonderful things, you know. Not. It's like Mary in the kitchen trying to do all this stuff in order to prove to God, to Jesus, who she is and what kind of person she is, so that Jesus will notice and give her the greater blessing. No, it doesn't work that way. God isn't. Are you that way with your children? Do you do that with your children, if you have children? No. Then why would God do that with us who are His children? It's not about what we do. It's not about trying to gain God's approval or gain God's blessing by the things that we do. I mean, is that who the Bible says God is? Well, according to Jesus, no. You know, in other words, what Jesus is saying is, hey, we're good, you and me. We're good, you know. You're my child, and all that I have is yours. So quit worrying about doing all this stuff for me, and let's just enjoy our relationship. That's where Mary's at. Mary is just sitting down going, hey, other stuff will wait, man. Let's just enjoy our relationship. Let's just enjoy our relationship with Jesus Christ. Let's enjoy our relationship with God and quit worrying about all that stuff. God says, I'm your father and you are my child, and nothing can change that. So quit trying to make it change. In other words, we can sit back, we can relax, and enjoy the relationship. Enjoying a relationship means that we're here today simply because we love God. Simply because Jesus, we know, loves us and we love Him for all that He's done for us, and we just enjoy that relationship. It's not about getting your ticket punched. Not about the stuff you do for God. It's simply realizing that, you know what? I want to be where God is. And I want to be where God's people are. Because that's where I feel it. That's where God helps, or where we can enjoy that relationship. Is God awesome or what? Man, tell you what. Even in a simple story like Mary and Martha, and I never related that before to the prodigal son, but those seem to be so closely related. And it tells me so much about who we are before God and who God is with us. That I'm His child and He's my Father, and all that He has is mine. And I've always been with Him, and I always will be. So quit worrying about the rest. God's awesome. Lord bless you all. Amen. Give God a hand.